Why are liberal women so unhappy? At first I thought it was a meme or a random survey or two that conservatives were clucking about. But when I looked into it, I saw study after study seeming to confirm it. Now, I'm not out here to criticize or own the libs or anything like that. You can find that all over YouTube. Instead, I researched why this highly educated and often successful group of people continually say they're unhappier than any other demographic. I'm Ken LaCorte, and this is Elephants in Rooms, where I look at some issues that can be uncomfortable, but in looking at them fairly, there are always lessons that we can learn from them. Sometimes about society, sometimes about ourselves. Here we'll take a serious look at the statistics and studies and see what's going on. I'll first answer the question, is it true? Are liberal women actually the most unhappy group in America? Then we'll look at some caveats, why the numbers might not exactly reflect reality. And finally, I'll get into the reason why liberal women might be so unhappy. So is it true? Conservatives might have fun mocking unhappy libs, but do nonpartisan studies actually bear this out? The answer? They really do. The General Social Survey is one of the longest-running snapshots of American attitudes. It's considered a gold standard for tracking American happiness, and it's been asking Americans about their happiness levels for over a half-century. If you chart the results by political ideology, conservatives consistently rate themselves happier than liberals. That's true for men and women alike, year after year. And women, on the whole, have been reporting lower happiness than men since at least the 1970s. Both of those observations overlap, and it puts liberal women right at the bottom of the happiness scale. And the gap isn't small either. By 2022, conservatives were about 10 to 15 percentage points more likely to say they're very happy than liberals. And the American Family Survey shows the same thing. Its findings suggest that conservative women are nearly twice as likely as liberal women to feel, quote, completely satisfied with their lives. 31% versus 15%. That's a pretty wide gap, and it's based on a national representative sample, so it's not as though they've just polled a small selected online group or something. Now, the surveys don't prove that a person's ideology determines her life satisfaction, but there's a definite correlation. But that's just self-reported happiness levels. When we talk about mental health, things get even uglier. The Pew Research Center, another respected mainstream organization, asked women if a doctor had ever diagnosed them with a mental health condition. Among white women aged 18 to 29, 56% of liberals said yes, over double the rate of conservative women, who came in at 27%. And it's not just young women. The same Pew data shows that liberal women in their 30s and 40s also report significantly more mental health diagnoses than conservatives in the same age group. We also have long-term data from the Monitoring the Future study, which has been tracking adolescent mental health since the 1970s. From 2005 to 2018, depressive symptoms shot up for everyone, but the spike was steepest for liberal girls. Their average depression score went from a 2.02 to 2.75 on a 0 to 4 scale, a sharper rise than conservative girls. That's not just feeling a little down, it's clinical level depression creeping into the picture. And the trending didn't just rise, it accelerated after 2010, right about the time social media became commonplace. Overall, the data tell a brutal story if you're a liberal woman under 30. They consistently report lower happiness levels, higher rates of diagnosed mental health conditions, and more symptoms of depression than pretty much any other major demographic group in the country. Now look, anytime I do a data-heavy episode, there's always a chance I could screw something up. If that happens, let me know about it, and I'll pin it in the correction below. Okay. So this leads us to the next logical question. If all of this is true, is it actually being liberal that makes these women unhappy? Or are we just seeing who's more willing to admit they're struggling? Let's talk about some caveats. How much of this is real and how much of it is just in the reporting? One major complication is that self-reported data can be deceptive. Liberal women, especially those in urban settings, they might be more open to therapy or just more forthcoming about mental health struggles. In many liberal and highly educated circles, therapy is not just accepted. For many, it's a part of their lifestyle. Just that can inflate diagnosis rates. I mean, if you never seek professional help, you can't be officially labeled with depression or anxiety. One recent study found that college-educated liberals were nearly twice as likely to say that they'd seen a therapist in the past years compared to conservatives with similar education levels. It's tricky to know what the chicken and what the egg is here. I mean, if you're going to therapy regularly, maybe there's a problem, but you're also much more likely to walk out with some type of a diagnosis, even if it's mild anxiety or situational depression. And there's another twist that's hard to quantify, but it's real. Liberal culture encourages vulnerability. In fact, among younger liberal women, there's almost a social currency to talking openly about their mental health struggles.
Therapy is important, but it is not a flex. Stop bragging about it. I'm doing the work. I'm unpacking my I don't need you to unpack. I need you to change.
You see it all over the media. Anxiety checklists, depression memes, TikToks about trauma responses. Conservative culture leans a bit more towards stoicism, putting your head down, powering through, and keeping your personal struggles personal. Now, that doesn't mean that conservative women are secretly just as unhappy, but it does mean the gap in reported mental health might be exaggerated. If one group treats emotional pain like a confession booth, and the other treats it like a private battle, you can end up with data that might look more dramatic than what it actually is. And finally, we need to remember that correlation doesn't necessarily mean causation. The data doesn't actually prove that being liberal causes unhappiness. It could easily work the other way around. Maybe people who already feel more anxious, isolated, or powerless are naturally drawn to progressive politics, which tends to emphasize injustice, inequality, or systemic problems. Studies aren't great at answering questions like that, so there's always a bit of wiggle room in the answers. So let's get to the heart of the question, though, understanding more reasons why. Is it something about liberal politics itself that makes some people miserable? Or is there a bigger cultural, personal, and psychological patterns going on? When you sift through the research, 5 big explanations jump out, and none of them are as simple as liberalism causes depression. Reason number 1, marriage and family. Whether someone is married is one of the strongest happiness predictors in decades of social science research. And it shows up everywhere, from the General Social Survey to the American Family Survey. And conservatives are far more likely to be married than liberals. Among women aged 18 to 55, 56% of conservatives are married, compared to just 37% of liberals. That's a 20-point gap. Now, you can argue that marriage doesn't make people happy. Maybe happy people are more likely to get married. But even when controlling for income, education, and other variables, the marriage effect still shows up. And it's not just marriage. Family life in general seems to play a role. Conservative women tend to have more children, and they tend to have them earlier, while liberal women tend to delay marriage and kids or skip it entirely. Marriage frequently includes emotional support, shared resources, and a sense of stability. And that may be harder to replicate if you're going it alone. I'm not saying that singleness is bad necessarily, but in terms of self-reported happiness, the data says traditional family structures are linked to greater life satisfaction. Okay, reason number 2, social media. If you could design a technology to wreck teen girls' mental health, it would look like Instagram. That's essentially what Jonathan Haidt found when he dug into the data for Monitoring the Future, a massive federally funded study that tracks adolescent well-being. After 2010, depression scores for liberal girls skyrocketed, and Haidt tied that directly to the rise of smartphones and social media. These platforms didn't just become a tool for connection. They became a stage for constant comparison, moral posturing, public self-diagnosis. And who are the heaviest users? Liberal girls. Data confirms they spend more of their time on social media than their conservative peers, and they're more likely to say social media makes them feel worse about themselves. And it's not just the endless beauty filters and influencer envy, although that's part of it. It's also the way liberal culture encourages kind of a public vulnerability performance. If you're a young liberal woman online, talking about your anxiety, your trauma, or your existential dread isn't just allowed, it's rewarded. It's both catnip for the algorithm and poison for your mental health. And doom scrolling is an issue as well. Each headline or viral post, it feels like another drop in a bucket of bad news, especially when that news is about politics. Which is reason number 3, the political climate. The Jimbroni study showed that liberal teens' mental health tanked after the 2016 election, a lot more than that of conservative teens. It's not a coincidence. If you believe the world is on fire and that it's your personal moral duty to fix it, you're carrying a constant, low-grade sense of doom. Conservatives worry about that too, but they tend to frame problems differently, as temporary challenges or even personal responsibilities. It's a small shift in mindset, but it has real mental health effects. It's not about whether one side is right or wrong politically. It's about how it feels to live inside each worldview. For many liberal women, especially the younger ones, when your identity is rooted in a sense of crisis, you're going to feel more anxious, more hopeless, and more exhausted. Hey, if you're liking this, now's a good time to remember to subscribe. Okay, so reason number 4, the LGBT factor. Okay, so this part's uncomfortable to talk about, but we can't ignore it. According to Gallup, 38% of liberal women under the age of 30 identify as LGBT. For conservatives, that number is just 5%. Now, this is self-identification, which is higher than self-reported actual sexual behavior, and that may be another video. But it still matters because LGBT people across virtually every major study report higher rates of depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts too. Studies consistently show that feeling like your identity is consistently under scrutiny correlates with more anxiety and lower well-being. And finally, reason number 5, more self-analysis. There's a possibility that therapy culture itself may actually be part of the problem. If you spent any time in progressive space, online or off, you know that self-analysis is a big thing. Journaling, trauma unpacking, inner child work, attachment therapy, self-diagnosing, and constantly revisiting every bad thing that ever happened to you. I mean, I live in Northern California and I see it, it's a thing. Now, there's a good side to taking care of your mental health, of course. But there's a point where too much introspection can go bad when you put your negative thoughts on a loop. The more you dig into your own sadness, the sadder you can get. Conservatives, who tend to focus more on external goals, like career, family, and whatnot, they tend to spend less time worrying about their internal emotional states, and they seem to be happier. Again, I don't want to say that therapy is bad, but there's a fine line between constructive self-awareness and a downward spiral of self-critique. Now, of course, none of this proves that being liberal causes depression. Life is messier than that. But when you add up less marriage, more social media, a catastrophizing worldview, and a lot of self-analysis, you can get a clear picture of why liberal women, on average, feel more stressed, anxious, and unhappy. Like good mysteries, there's not one simple answer. The same holds true for this mystery. How did Kevin Spacey have 30 people accuse him of serious misconduct over several trials, yet he had 0 convictions? Did he get off because he's rich and famous? Or was he a victim of cancel culture and greed? It's a thought-provoking story, and it's one of my favorites. Look, I love researching and sharing this information. If you found it a worthwhile trip, come back and do it again. Take care.